Hey, you there? Yeah, you. Sitting comfortably, probably in your car with lane assist, backup cameras, GPS navigation, and automatic braking. Feeling pretty confident about your driving skills, aren't you? Before we start this particular story, and trust me, this one's going to be a wild ride, I need you to do something. Pull out your phone, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell. Because the stories I'm about to tell you about driving spy cars in 1962, they're the kind of tales that'll make you grateful for every modern safety feature you've done? Good. Now, put your phone away. You're going to need both hands for this story. Or at least, you would if you were actually driving a 1962 spy car through the streets of East Berlin while being chased by the Stasi and trying to shoot back with one hand, which, spoiler alert, you absolutely could not do. You'd crash within 30 seconds and die in a spectacular fireball. But let me tell you about the people who actually did it. My name's Daniel Morrison, 74 years, spent 25 years as a CIA officer, and a good chunk of that time was spent behind the wheel of various vehicles that the agency euphemistically called operationally. What that meant in practice, cars that had been modified for espionage, high-speed escapes, and occasionally mobile firefight. And let me tell you right now, driving a spy car in 1962 was nothing like James Bond made it look. There were no ejectors, no machine guns hidden in the headlights, no oil slick dispensers or smoke screens deployed at the touch of a button. Those were movie fans. What we actually had is far more terrifying. Souped-up engined and ordinary-looking cars, no safety features whatsoever, manual everything, and the occasional hidden compartment for smuggling people or documents. Oh, and you had to drive these death traps through hostile territory while being pursued by people who very much wanted to shoot you. Still think you could handle it? Let me walk you through a typical operational drive and count all the ways you'd die. Buckle up. Or actually don't, because in 1962, most cars didn't have seatbelts. That's problem number one. Let me introduce you to my operational vehicle from 1962, a 1960 Opel Rekord. You've never heard of it, right? Exactly. That was the point. It looked like the most boring car ever manufactured. Gray. 4 doors. Plain steel wheels. The kind of car a low-level government bureaucrat would drive. The kind of car that was invisible in traffic because it was so aggressively ordinary. Except under the hood, this boring German sedan had been completely rebuilt by CIA Technical. The original 1.5-liter engine, gone. Replaced with a modified 3. Aero Siebleiter Straight 6 from a BMW, producing about 160 horsepower, which doesn't sound like much now, but in 1962, in a lightweight sedan, it was absurdly overpowered. The suspension had been upgraded with heavy-duty springs and shocks. The brakes had been improved slightly. The transmission was a 4-speed manual that required genuine muscle to shift, and hidden in various parts of the car were compartments for weapons, documents, surveillance equipment, and occasionally people. This car could do 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds, legitimately fast for 1962, and had a top speed of around 130 Biederum. It handled like a go-kart if the go-kart weighed 2,400 pounds and had bias-ply tires that wanted to kill you. There was no power steering. Your arms would be dead after 10 minutes. Anti-lock brakes. You locked up the wheels, you were sliding. Traction control. Punch the throttle wrong, you were spinning. Airbags. Crash and die. Simple as that. Crumple zones. The car didn't crumple, you did. Backup camera. What's a camera? GPS. You navigated by memory, or you got lost and died. What you did have was an engine that wanted to kill you. Brakes that were more of a suggestion than a stopping mechanism. Steering wheel the size of a dinner plate that required two-handed wrestling. A manual transmission that demanded perfect rev matching, or you'd grind gears loud enough to alert every surveillance team in the city. Bias-ply tires that provided approximately zero grip in rain. Drum brakes that faded after 2 hard stops. No side view mirrors worth mentioning. A single rear view mirror that vibrated so much at speed you couldn't see anything in it. And the best part? You had to drive this death machine through cities you barely knew at night without streetlight, while being chased by East German secret police in their own souped-up vehicles, and occasionally you had to shoot at them with one hand while steering with the other. Still confident? Let's continue. Let me tell you about the worst night of my operational driving career. Berlin, 1962, about 3 months before they built the wall higher and made crossings even more impossible. I'd just extracted a source from East Berlin, a scientist who'd decided he'd had enough of the working on Soviet weapons programs and wanted to defect. We'd smuggled him into the hidden compartment in my Opel, behind the back seat, barely large enough for a full-grown man, absolutely not comfortable or dignified, but it worked. The extraction went smoothly, got him into the car, got the compartment closed, started driving toward the border crossing point we'd arranged. Everything was fine for about. Then I noticed headlight following, matching my turns. Not good. Sped up. They sped. Definitely. They'd made us somehow be a tip-off. Maybe the scientist had been under surveillance. And what mattered was I had a defter hidden in my car in another compartment, and I was about to be stopped and searched. East German Sea. Not acceptable. So I did what you're trained to do in that situation. I ran. Punched the throttle. That modified BMW engine roared to life. And suddenly my boring gray Opel was accelerating like it had been shot out of a cannon. We went from 40 to 80 km/h in seconds. The Stasi car behind me, also fast, stayed right on my tail. Now, here's where it gets I'm driving through East Berlin at streets poorly lit, navigating from memory because I'd studied maps. You can't really know a city until you've driven it at speed while people are chasing you. I'm shifting gears constantly. This isn't an automatic transmission. I'm manually working through 4 gears, clutch and gas and brake, all while steering around corners and watching mirrors. The Stasi car behind me is gaining. Their driver is good. Local knowledge reads better than I do. He's matching my moves, anticipating my turns. Then my passenger, my agency partner, guy named Frank, who was riding shotgun, says, "They're going to shoot." What? Passenger side of their car. Guy's got a weapon out. They're going to shoot at us. Sure enough, I glance in my vibrating rearview mirror and see a muzzle. They're shooting at us while driving. At 80 Minus Sim through a city. Bullet hits the trunk. Another hits the back window. Cracks it but doesn't shatter it. We'd upgraded to thicker glass. One of the few modifications that was actually working as intended. Frank pulls out his pistol. A Browning high power, standard issue. Says, "I'm returning fire." "Don't miss," I say, which in retrospect was not helpful advice. Frank rolls down his window, hand crank, takes precious seconds, leans out, and starts shooting back at the pursuing car. He's firing a pistol, one-handed, out of a moving vehicle traveling at 80 plus some mph, trying to hit another moving vehicle. He misses, obvious. Shooting accurately from a moving car is nearly impossible. Shooting accurately at another moving car while both vehicles are bouncing over cobblestone streets is absolutely impossible. But he's trying because we're trained to return fire when fired upon, even if it's mostly just for suppressive effect. I'm trying to drive, shift, watch the road, watch my mirrors, and not get shot. My hands are at 10 and 2 on the wheel because in 1962, without power steering, you needed both hands full-time or the car would kill you. The steering wheel is fighting me on every turn. The suspension is bottoming out over bumps. The brakes are starting to fade from the heat. Frank empties his magazine, 13 rounds, and says, "I need to reload." "Don't drop the magazine," I shout, because we're trained to not leave evidence behind, even in the middle of a high-speed chase. He fumbles the magazine change because he's in a moving car being shot at, so his hands aren't exactly steady, and the empty magazine falls into the footwell. He fishes it out, pockets it, slaps in a fresh magazine, leans out again, fires more rounds. I take a hard corner. Too hard. The tires scream. The rear end wants to break loose. Those bias ply tires have almost no grip, and for a terrifying second, I think we're going to spin. I counter-steer, ease off the gas, somehow keep control. The Stasi car takes the same corner, also nearly loses it. We're in a residential area now, buildings on both sides, narrow streets. This is bad, less room to maneuver. But I know there's a bridge up ahead, across a canal, and on the other side is the planned border crossing point. If we can just get there. More shots from behind. One takes out our remaining good rear window, glass everywhere. Another hits the driver's side mirror, just clips it, but now my mirror is hanging by wires, completely useless. Frank is still shooting back. He's gone through another magazine. I have no idea if he's hit any. I'm too busy driving. Then, ahead of me, I see them. 2 more Stasi cars blocking. Roadblock. They've called ahead, positioned more units to cut us off. Frank, we've got problems. Yeah. I've got maybe 5 seconds. Try to ram through the roadblock. Idea. Probably crash and find an alternate route with the area well enough. Or abandon the car and run on foot. Terrible. We've got a defector. I make a split-second decision. Take an alley. It's narrow, barely wide enough, but it's not blocked. I wrench the wheel, downshift to second gear, grinding the gears because I don't have time to rev match properly, and we shoot into the alley. We're scraping both sides. Mirrors get torn off. Paint is getting scraped away. The alley opens into a small courtyard, then another alley on the far side. I gun it. The Stasi car behind us tries to follow. It's bigger than our Opel. It doesn't fit. It gets wedged, stuck. Beautiful. But the other 2 Stasi cars from the roadblock are now pursuing. We've only bought seconds. I navigate through back streets, alleys, routes I half remember from the maps. Frank has stopped shooting. We're not being directly fired upon anymore, and he's running low on ammunition. I'm driving entirely on instinct and adrenaline now, not really thinking, just reacting somehow. Honestly, I'm not sure how. We make it to the canal. There's the bridge. And there is our border crossing point, a makeshift checkpoint manned by our people and cooperative West German police, positioned in a legal gray area that existed before the wall went up fully. I accelerate toward it. The Stasi cars behind us brake hard. They won't cross into the western sector. It would cause an international incident. They stop. We cross. We made it. Somehow, despite everything. I pull over on the West Berlin side, shut off the engine, and just sit there, shaking. Frank is also shaking. We both realize we almost died about 17 times in the last 15 minutes. The defector in the hidden compartment, who'd been subjected to possibly the worst car ride of his entire life, knocks on the interior panel. "Can I come out now?" "Yeah," "Yeah, you can come out." We extract him. He's pale, traumatized, and immediately says, "That was insane. You people are insane. But thank you. Thank you for getting me out." We get him processed, debriefed, sent to us. The operation is technically successful, but the car is destroyed. Both mirrors gone, back window shattered, bullet holes in the trunk and door panel, paint scraped off both sides. The engine is smoking. I'd pushed it way beyond recommended. The brakes are literally, the pads are worn to nothing from the heart. The technical services guys who inspect it later tell me, this car is done. Total write-off. Also, you're lucky to be alive. Those bullet holes came within inches of the fuel tank. If they'd hit that, they don't finish the sentence. They don't need to. We all know what happens when bullets hit fuel tanks in 1962 cars. Spectacular explosions, no survivors. That was one night, one operational drive. And I'm telling you, you would not have survived. Let's talk about something Hollywood gets catastrophically wrong: shooting while driving. In movies, characters casually steer with one hand, lean out the window, and precisely shoot pursuing vehicles. They hit tires, they hit drivers, they cause pursuing cars to crash spectacular, all while maintaining perfect control of their own vehicle. In reality, shooting accurately from a moving car is nearly impossible. Shooting accurately at another moving car is absolutely impossible unless you're within a few yards and incredibly lucky. Here's why. Problem number 1. You need both hands to drive. This is especially true in 1962. No power steering means you're wrestling a heavy steering wheel constantly. The car wants to go straight. You're forcing it to turn. Take one hand off the wheel, and the car will immediately start drifting. On a straightaway, you might manage for a few seconds. On a curve or while dodging obstacles, forget it. Problem number 2. Shooting one-handed is inaccurate. Pistols are designed to be fired with 2 hands, one on the grip, one supporting the frame. Proper stance, controlled breathing, squeeze the trigger smoothly. You do all that, you'll hit a stationary target at 25 yards. Shoot one-handed, accuracy drops dramatically. You're supporting the entire weapon with recoil is magnified. Muzzle flip is your second shot will be aimed at the sky unless you're very. Now add in that you're in a moving vehicle, bouncing over uneven roads, being jostled constantly. Every bump affects your aim. You're not going to hit anything except by blind luck. Problem number 3. You're shooting at a moving target. The pursuing car is also moving, also bouncing, also changing speed and direction. You'd need to lead the target, aim ahead of where it currently is, accounting for both vehicle speeds and trajectory. Professional marksmen struggle with this. You, shooting one-handed out a car window? No chance. Problem number 4. Recoil affects your driving. Fire a pistol one-handed, and you'll feel the recoil through your arm and shoulder. It's not huge, but it's enough to jerk your body. That jerk translates to your other hand on the steering wheel. The car swerves slightly. Do this repeatedly, and you're swerving all over the road, making yourself an easier target and increasing your crash risk. Problem number 5. Brass ejection is a problem. Semi-automatic pistols eject spent brass casings. These hot brass casings fly out to the side, sometimes right back into the car. I once had a hot brass casing land on my lap while I was driving. Instinct is to brush it away. I took my hand off the wheel to do so. Nearly crashed. Another time, Frank, my frequent partner, had a brass casing hit him in the face. Split second of distraction, but when you're driving at speed being pursued, split seconds matter. Problem number 6. You're making yourself a target. Lean out the window to shoot, and you're exposing yourself. The pursuing car can shoot back, and they've got a stationary target. You, leaning out the window while you're trying to hit a moving target. Them, driving. Bad math. You're much more likely to get shot than to successfully shoot them. Despite all these problems, we still did it. Because when someone's shooting at you, returning fire is psychologically important. It forces the pursuers to take cover, to swerve, to be more cautious. It might not hit them, but it makes them think twice about getting too close. But make no mistake, this wasn't accurate gunfighting. This was spray bullets in the general direction of the threat and hope for the best, while trying not to crash your own. The CIA did try to train us in operational driving. They really did. They set up courses, brought in professional stunt drivers, gave us time behind the wheel of modified vehicles. But the gap between training and reality was enormous. Training exercise number 1. The evasive driving course. They built a course at a facility in Virginia. Cones, obstacles, simulated streets. You would drive through it at speed, practice J-turns, reversing at speed, then spinning 180 degrees to drive forward. Bootleg turns, handbrake turn while moving forward. Pit maneuvers, ramming another car's rear quarter panel to spin them out. In controlled conditions, on a closed course, watching and no actual danger, you could learn these. They were difficult but manageable. In reality, on actual streets, with actual traffic and pedestrians and Stasi shooting at you, every technique became exponentially harder. The J-turn you'd practiced 20 times in Virginia, you'd panic, over-rotate, and crash into a building in Berlin. The bootleg turn, you'd lock up the brakes, the tires would screech, and you'd just slide straight, because bias-ply tires have no grip. Training helped, but the difference between practice and reality was measured in terror and improvisation. Training exercise 2, shooting from vehicles. They tried to teach us to shoot accurately from moving vehicles. Really tried. We'd spend hours at ranges shooting at stationary targets while riding in slow-moving cars, then faster cars, then cars on bumpy roads. Best case in extensive training. You could hit a man-sized target at 10 yards while moving at 30, maybe 20 park, maybe 20%. That's trained CIA officers with hundreds of practice. Under stress, in actual operations, that 20% hit rate dropped to maybe 5%. We knew this, the instructors knew this, but they trained us anyway because sometimes that 5% was the difference between escape and capture. Training exercise number 3, high-speed pursuit driving. This was actually fun. They'd put you in a modified car on a track and have another driver chase you. You'd practice maintaining speed through corners, late braking, acceleration out of turns, defensive positioning. Good drivers could manage 100 plus mph on a track pretty comfortably after training, but tracks are smooth, well lit, predictable. Streets are none of those things. Berlin streets in 1962 were cobblestone in places, poorly maintained, full of potholes, narrow, dark, and absolutely terrifying. Every technique you'd learned on the track had to be adapted, usually by slowing way down or accepting much higher risk. The clean 90-degree turn you'd mastered at 60 mph on the track on a cobblestone Berlin street at night, 40 mph maximum unless you wanted to die. Training exercise for before night driving without lights. This one was genuinely scary in training and worse in reality. They teach you to drive at night with minimal or no headlights, useful when you don't want to be. In training, you'd drive country roads at night with just parking lights or no lights at all, navigating by moonlight and ambient light from buildings. In reality, trying to navigate East Berlin streets at night with no light while being pursued, your night vision ruined by. You couldn't see anything. You were navigating by memory and prayer. I saw more than one officer crash doing this. Not fatal crashes, just minor collisions with parked cars, curbs, obstacles they literally couldn't see. But even minor crashes during operational drives could be fatal if they disabled your vehicle and you got captured. What training couldn't teach? Training couldn't replicate the stress, the absolute terror of knowing that if you crash, you don't just fail the exercise, you die or get captured and probably tortured. Training couldn't replicate the unpredictability, the civilian who steps into the street unexpectedly, the random roadblock, the mechanical failure at the worst possible moment. Training couldn't replicate the accumulated fatigue. You're not just driving fast. You're doing it after being awake for 30 hours, running multiple operations, stressed beyond belief, possibly injured. Your reaction times are shot. Your decision-making is impaired, but you still have to drive, shoot, and escape. So when I tell you that you wouldn't last a day driving a spy car in 1962, I'm not exaggerating. Even trained CIA officers with hundreds of hours of practice struggled. Civilian you, with zero training, in a car with no modern safety features, being pursued and shot at, you'd be dead in minutes. Let me tell you about the actual vehicles the CIA used for operational driving in the early 1960s because they're fascinating and terrible in equal measure. The Mercedes-Benz 220S, the Executive Special. This was a favorite for Western Europe operations. Upscale enough to fit diplomatic cover, fast enough for escapes, common enough to be unremarkable. CIA modification. Engine upgrades from 95 rayers to around 140 HP. Suspension improvements. Bullet-resistant glass, not bulletproof. Resistant, meaning it could stop maybe one or two pistol rounds shattering. Hidden compartments indoors, under seat, in trunk auxiliary fuel tank for extended range. Heavy duty, but still weren't great. Problems. Heavy. Over 3,000 lbs. So even with power upgrades, not particularly fast drum brakes that faded quickly under hard use, expensive, so losing. 1 to operational damage was painful, distinctive enough that surveillance teams could track you by car type. I drove one of these in Vienna. Nice car, comfortable. But the first time I had to do a high-speed escape, I learned that nice and operational are very different quality. The car handled like a yacht. Smooth on straight roads, absolute disaster in quick maneuvers. Nearly rolled it taking a corner too fast because the body roll was insane and the tires couldn't handle the lateral G-force. The Opel Rekord, the invisible man. This was my car in Berlin. As I mentioned earlier, aggressively ordinary exterior, modified internals, CIA modifications, engine swap, BMW 6-cylinder, upgraded suspension, modified transmission for faster shifts, reinforced frame, hidden compartments, basic armor plating on doors, steel plates added weight, but some bullet protection. Problems. The engine was too powerful for the chassis. The car wanted to spin under hard acceleration. Bias ply tires gave almost no grip in wet conditions. No power steering meant your arms were dead after any high-speed drive. The manual transmission required expert clutch work or you'd burn it out. Parts were German-specific, hard to source quickly if damaged, but it worked. The boring exterior meant you could park it anywhere and nobody noticed. Perfect for surveillance work. And when you needed speed, it had speed, at least until something broke, which happened frequently. The Ford Taunus 17M, the workhorse, common in Germany, cheap, easy to maintain, utterly unremarkable. The CIA used dozens of these for routine operations. CIA modifications, mild engine upgrades, couldn't do too much without making it obvious. Hidden compartments, upgraded brakes, sometimes auxiliary lights for night drive, better tires. Problems. Not particularly fast even with modifications, handling was mediocre at best. Cheap construction meant things rattled and broke. Engine reliability was questionable under hard use. Totally underpowered for any serious escape situation. These were the cars you used when you needed transportation, Not when you expected trouble. If you got into a chase with one of these, your strategy was find an alley and hide, not outrun them. I once had to use a Taunus for an emergency extraction. The defector we were pulling out was in trouble, needed immediate pickup. The modified Opel was in the shop, so I got stuck with a barely modified Taunus. Everything went fine until we got spotted. Then we were being chased by a Stasi car that was significantly fast. My brilliant strategy? Drive into the narrowest alleys I could find where their bigger car couldn't follow, then turn off the engine and sit in the dark hoping they'd drive past. It worked, but it was terrifying. Not exactly heroic spy movie stuff. The Volkswagen Beetle. You've got to be kidding me. Yes, the CIA actually used VW Beetles for some operations. Extremely common in Germany, completely unremarkable, could go anywhere without attracting attention. CIA modifications? Minor engine upgrades. The Beetle engine was so small there wasn't much you could do. Hidden compartments. Very small. This was a tiny car. Sometimes auxiliary fuel tank. Better tires. Problems? Slow. Comically slow. 0-60 peak in about 30 seconds with modifications. Maybe 22 seconds. My grandmother could accelerate faster. Rear engine, rear-wheel drive layout meant terrible weight and unpredictable handling. Tiny interior meant you couldn't carry much or hide much. No power whatsoever for escapes. If you got in a crash, the Beetle would crumple like a tin can and you'd die. The Beetle was only used for low-risk operations where you needed maximum invisibility and didn't expect any trouble. If trouble found you anyway, your only option was to abandon the car and run on. You weren't escaping in a Beetle. Got chased by Stasi. His Beetle's top speed was maybe 70 mph downhill with a tailwind. The Stasi car was doing 90+ mph easily. He lasted about 2 minutes before he had to ditch the car and run. He got away on foot, but only because he was in a crowded area and the Stasi couldn't shoot without witnesses. The Beetle was captured, and presumably the Stasi had a good laugh about Americans using Beetles for spy work. The Chevrolet Bel Air, American muscle. For operations in Western Europe or the U.S., the CIA sometimes used American cars. Big, powerful, distinctive. CIA modifications. These cars already had powerful V8 engines. Modifications focused on handling and braking heavy-duty suspension. Better brakes, not great by modern standards, but better than European drums. Hidden compartment. Sometimes armor plating. Problems. Huge and distinctive. Everyone knew you were American. Gas mileage was terrible. Maybe 10 mpg under hard driving. Handling was awful. These cars were designed for straight American highways, not tight European streets. Parts were hard to source in Europe, way too conspicuous for operational work. I drove one once in Paris. Felt like piloting a boat. It was fast in a straight line. That V8 engine had power, but the first time I tried to take a tight corner, I thought the car was going to roll over. The body roll was the steering was, the brakes were marginal. Also, American cars in 1960s Europe stood out massively, not ideal for covert work. What all these cars had in common, no seatbelts, or if they had them, nobody used them. Manual transmissions, automatics were rare and unreliable. Drum brakes that faded under hard use. Bias ply tires with terrible grip. No crumple zones. Crashes meant you absorbed all the impact, minimal rust protection. Cars from this era rotted quickly. Carburetors that could flood or stall at bad moments. Electrical systems that were marginally reliable at best. No modern safety features whatsoever. Every single one was a potential death trap. Even the expensive Mercedes was just more comfortable while being unsafe, and you had to drive these machines at maximum speed through hostile territory while being shot at, with one hand on the wheel and possibly a gun in the other hand. Still think you could do it? Let me tell you about the unsung heroes of Cold War operational driving, the mechanic. The CIA Technical Services guys who built, maintained, and repeatedly rebuilt our spy cars after we destroyed them doing stupid things at high speed. These guys were artists, engineers, magicians, and they hated us. Well, not hate exactly, but they had a deeply frustrated relationship with field officers who would take their carefully engineered vehicles and return them as smoking wrecks full of bullet holes. Meet Bruno. There was a mechanic at our Berlin facility, German national, vetted and cleared, absolutely brilliant with cars, named Bruno. Mid-50s, built like a barrel, perpetually wearing grease-stained coveralls and a scowl. Bruno maintained our fleet of operational vehicles. He knew every modification, every hidden compartment, every trick these cars could do. He could diagnose problems by sound. Literally, you'd drive up, he'd listen to the engine and say, "Your timing is off," or "You've burned out the clutch again, Daniel." And he was constantly, perpetually disappointed in us. I'd bring the Opel back after an operation. Bullet holes, scraped paint, blown tire, smoking engine. Bruno would walk around the car slowly, examining the damage, shaking his. Then he'd look at me and say, in heavily accented English, "What did you do to my car?" "Your car? It's an agency. I built this car. I modified the engine. I installed the compartments. I tuned the suspension. It is my car. You are just the idiot who drives it." He'd point at the bullet holes. "These I understand. People shoot at you, not your fault. But this," pointing at the scrapes from the alley, "this is because you drove somewhere stupid. And this," pointing at the smoking engine, "this is because you over-revved it. Again, I tell you every time, do not exceed 6,000 RPM. The engine cannot handle it. And every time you come back, engine smoking, because you exceeded 6,000 RPM. I was being chased. Then drive smarter, not faster. You Americans always thinking more power solves everything." He'd sigh, dramatically. "I will fix it. Again, but Daniel, please, I am begging you, stop destroying my cars." "I'll try." "You will not try. You will fail. You always fail. But I will fix it anyway because this is my job. Go, file your report. Tell them you were very heroic and saved the day. I will be here, rebuilding what you destroyed." Bruno was right to be. We destroyed cars regularly, not always dramatically. Sometimes it was just worn-out parts from hard use, but often enough that the mechanics were constantly rebuilding. The modification process let me walk you through how these cars were built, because it was genuinely impressive work. Start with a stock vehicle, say an Opel Rekord. Bruno and his team would strip it down almost completely, remove the engine, remove the interior, examine every component. Engine modification, original engine removed, sold or scrapped, new engine installed, usually something with significantly more power from a different vehicle entirely. Custom motor mounts fabricated to fit the new engine in the old engine. Upgraded fuel system, bigger fuel pumps, larger fuel tank, modified carburetor. Custom exhaust system, had to be quiet, don't attract attention, but also efficient, need that power. Improved cooling system, more powerful engines generate more heat. This process took weeks. The engine had to fit perfectly, run reliably, and not look obviously modified if someone opened the hood for a casual inspection. Suspension and handling, heavy-duty springs and shock absorbers installed. Sometimes the entire suspension geometry was modified, larger sway bars to reduce body roll, reinforced chassis, mounting points, because the increased power and harder driving put more stress on everything. Braking system, larger brake drums, or if possible, early disc brakes, rare in 1962. Better brake pads and shoes, upgraded master cylinder for better brake pressure, sometimes auxiliary brake cooling ducts. Even with all these upgrades, the brakes were still marginal by modern standards, but they were significantly better than stock. Hidden compartment, built into doors, floor panels, trunk, under seats, behind rear seat, had to be completely invisible. Secret police were trained to find hidden compartment. Access mechanisms were clever. Hidden latches, magnetic catches, panels that looked welded but weren't size varied depending on what you needed to hide. Documents. Building these compartments was an art. They had to be structurally sound, rattle or shift, perfectly concealed, no visible seams or fasteners, and accessible quickly. Point having a hidden gun if it takes 3 minutes to access. Bruno once showed me a door panel he'd modified. From the outside, it looked completely stock. He pressed a specific spot near the window crank, and a panel popped open revealing a cavity that could hold a pistol and 2 spare magazines. "See?" he said proudly. "Perfect. Unless you know exactly where to press, you will never find it. Even if you remove the door panel, it looks like normal door structure. Only when you know the trick." He pressed another hidden catch, and suddenly the entire false structure came apart, revealing the actual mechanism. "It's incredible." "Yes, it is. I am very talented." He closed it back up. "Please do not crash this door into anything. It took me 3 days to build this modification. I crashed that door into a concrete barrier 2 weeks later during an evasive maneuver. Bruno did not speak to me for a month. Armor plating, steel plates installed in doors, behind seats, sometimes in trunk not bulletproof. That would be too heavy, but bullet-resistant. Could stop pistol rounds, maybe slow down rifle rounds. Added significant weight, which affected handling and fuel economy. The armor was a compromise. Too much. The car became sluggish and obvious. Modifications would be visible from the heavy load. Too little. You had no. Bruno would calculate exactly how much armor could be added without compromising the suspension or making the car sit noticeably low. Auxiliary equipment. Extra fuel tanks for extended range. Auxiliary battery for surveillance equipment. Wiring for hidden lights, cameras, recording equipment. Sometimes reinforced bumpers for ramming. Though this was rare, ramming usually damaged as there. Every modification had to be thought. Add weight here, compensate there, increase, upgrade cooling. It was a complex engineering puzzle that Bruno and his team solved repeatedly. The post-operation inspection. After every operational use, the car went through inspection. Even if there was no visible damage, Bruno would check everything. I'd bring the car back from a routine surveillance run. No chase, no shooting, just normal driving. Bruno would still insist on inspecting it. Engine temperature, he'd ask. Normal? Oil pressure? Fine. Any unusual sounds? No. He'd pop the hood anyway. Check fluid levels. Listen to the engine. Inspect belts and look underneath for leaks or damage. Why do you do this every time? The car's fine. The car is fine until it is not fine, Bruno said, and when it becomes not fine during operation, you die. So I check every time. This way, I catch problems before they kill you. He once found a cracked motor mount during a routine inspection. See this? He pointed at a hairline crack in the metal bracket holding the engine, and this would have broken completely during hard driving. Engine would have shifted, damaged other components, possibly caught fire. You would have been stranded or dead. But the car seemed fine. Cars do not tell you when they are about to break. That is why I check. He replaced the mount. You are welcome for saving your life. Thank you, Bruno. You are welcome. Now please try to not break anything else this week. The relationship between drivers and mechanics. There was a constant tension. We needed these cars to perform miracles. They needed us to not destroy their careful work. But there was also mutual respect. Bruno knew we weren't trying to wreck the cars. We were using them as hard as necessary to stay alive. We knew Bruno was keeping us alive with meticulous maintenance and brilliant modifications. After I'd been in Berlin for about a year, I brought the Opel back after a particularly bad chase. Multiple bullet holes, blown tire, damaged suspension. The engine was making a sound that can only be described as expensive mechanical death. Bruno walked around the car, documenting every bit of damage. Then he looked at me and said, "You are still alive." "Yes, it's good. I would be sad if you die." "Not very sad. You're hard on my, but sad." He patted the Opel's hood. "This car protected you. Did it? That make the car is destroyed, but you are alive. That I'm sorry about the car. Be grateful and be better driver." Smiled slightly, "But mostly be grateful. Now go away. I have much work to do." Bruno rebuilt that car from the ground up. Took him 3 weeks. When he was done, it looked identical to before. Same boring gray Opel. But underneath, everything had been rebuilt, upgraded, improved. I made it better, Bruno told me when he handed over the keys. More power, better handling, stronger suspension. If you crash this one, I will be very angry. I kept that car for another year, used it for dozens of operations, pushed it hard, but tried to be more careful. When I finally left Berlin, I thanked Bruno for keeping me alive. You are welcome. You are still an idiot who drives too fast and breaks things. But you are an alive idiot. That is something. That's high praise. Chapter 7. Winter Driving, or How to Die Even Faster on Ice. You think driving a 1962 Spy car is hard? Try doing it in winter. In Berlin, where the temperature drops below freezing and the streets turn into ice rinks with cobblestone. Winter operational driving was a nightmare. Everything that was already difficult became impossible. Everything that was already dangerous became suicidal. Problem number 1. Tires. Remember, these are bias plots. On dry pavement, provided marginal. On wet pavement, were sketchy. On ice, you might as well be driving on soap. There were no winter tires in the modern sense. No specialized tread patterns designed for snow and ice. You had the same tires year-round, and in winter they were completely inadequate. I once had to do a high-speed escape in January. Light snow had fallen, then melted slightly, then frozen. The streets were like glass. I accelerated, carefully trying not to spin the tires, and the rear end immediately broke loose. The car started sliding sideways. I counter-steered, got it back under control, tried again. Same result. I was trying to escape at high speed but couldn't actually go fast because the tires had no grip whatsoever. The Stasi car chasing me was having the same problem, so we're both sliding around corners at 30 mph, both fishtailing constantly, both trying desperately not to. It was less like a car chase and more like a demolition derby on ice, slow, uncontrolled, terrifying. I eventually escaped by, out of this, driving the wrong way down a one-way street that was slightly less icy. The Stasi didn't follow. Either they had better judgment, or they simply couldn't control their car well enough to attempt it. Problem number 2, engine starting, was unreliable. Carbureted engines in freezing temperatures are temperamental. You'd turn the key, and the engine would crank, and crank, and crank, and maybe eventually start, maybe not. Modern fuel injection solves this problem. But in 1962, you had carburetors that could flood, chokes that needed manual adjustment, and engines that sometimes just refused to start when it was cold. Imagine this scenario. You've completed your opera. You're getting in the car to leave. You need to leave right now because you've been spotted. You turn the key, the engine cranks, doesn't start. Cranks more, still doesn't. You pump the gas pedal carefully because too much and you'll flood the engine. Crank again, still nothing. Meanwhile, the people who spotted you are approaching. You're sitting in a car that won't start in hostile territory about to be captured. You pull out the choke, try again. The engine coughs, almost catches, dies. Try again. It catches. It's running, but roughly, threatening to stall. You give it gas, keep it running, put it in gear, and drive away while the engine's still warming up and running like garbage. This happened to me twice. Both times, I was seconds away from capture. Both times, the engine eventually. I got very lucky. Bruno's. In winter, you must start the engine every few hours when on operation. Keep it warm. Never let it get This is only way to ensure start when you need it. Great advice. Not always practical when you're hiding a car in an alley trying to stay unnoticed. Problem 3. Windows frosted. From the inside, cars in 1962 had terrible climate control. Heating was marginal. Defrosting was barely functional. And when you had multiple people breathing in a cold car, the moisture from their breath would condense on the inside of the windows and freeze. You'd be driving along, and gradually your windshield would frost over from the inside. Your visibility would decrease until you literally couldn't see where you were going. Your option: use the defroster, which barely worked and took forever. Scrape the inside of the windshield while driving. Dangerous and stupid. Roll down the window and stick your head out to sea. Even more dangerous and stupider. I usually did option 3. I'd roll down the driver's window, stick my head out into the freezing air, and drive that way until it could stop somewhere safe and properly defrost the windshield. Driving 50 mph down a Berlin street in January with your head out the window, freezing wind in your face, trying to navigate while you can't feel your face anymore? Not but sometimes necessary. Problem number 4. Salt and rust. European cities in winter used salt on the roads. Lots of salt. This salt would spray up from the tires, coat the underside of the car, and accelerate rust formation dramatically. Cars from this era had minimal rust protection. A car driven through one Berlin winter would develop significant rust. Multiple winters, the car would start falling apart structurally. Bruno fought a constant battle against rust. He'd coat the undercarriage with oil, replace rusted components, reinforce weakened structures, but it was a losing battle. Winter operational driving was slowly destroying every car in the fleet. These cars are not meant for winter, Bruno would. German winters are too harsh. Salt is everywhere. Everything rusts. I replace parts. They rust again. It is endless cycle. Can't we get cars with better rust protection? In 1962? This is how cars are made. They rust. We deal with it. He'd gesture at the rusted underbody of an Opel. "See this? I replaced this panel 6 months ago. Already rusted through again. Winter driving destroys everything." Problem number 5. Black ice was invisible. Death. Black ice, that thin, invisible layer of ice that forms on roads, was absolutely terrifying. You couldn't see it. The road looked fine. Then suddenly, with no warning, you'd hit a patch of black ice, and all traction would vanish instantly. In a modern car with electronic stability control and anti-lock brakes, black ice is dangerous but manageable. The car's computers detect the loss of traction and automatically adjust braking and power delivery to help you maintain control. In a 1962 car with no computers, no safety system, nothing, you hit black ice and you were completely at the mercy of physics. The car would go wherever momentum took it, and your only options were: don't brake. Braking would lock up the wheels and get worse. Don't accelerate. Would just spin the wheels useless. Steer gently in the direction you want to go, and pray. I hit black ice during a surveillance run once. Wasn't even being chased, just routine driving. Suddenly the car was sliding sideways at 40 mph. I couldn't control it. It was just sliding toward parked cars on the right side of the road. I was going to hit them. There was nothing I could do. The car was sliding, and I was a passenger. At the last second, pure luck, the car hit a slightly less icy patch of road. The tires caught just enough grip to slow I missed the cars by inches. My heart was pounding. I pulled over and sat there 5 minutes, just breathing, processing how close I'd come to during a routine drive. Winter operating wasn't just hard. It was Russian roulette with every drive. Maybe you'd get fined. Maybe you'd hit ice and crash and die. You never knew. Problem number 6. Carrying chains was necessary, but miserable. In really bad winter conditions, you needed tire chains, actual metal chains that wrapped around your tires to provide grip in snow and ice. Installing tire chains in 1962 was a miserable process. Stop the car, get out into the freezing weather, lay the chains out on the ground, drive the car slowly onto the chains, wrap the chains around the tires, connect and tighten the chains with half-frozen fingers, drive carefully, listening to the chains slap against the wheel wells. It took 15-20 minutes in good conditions. In bad conditions, at night, in the snow, with frozen fingers, it could take half an hour or more, and you couldn't drive fast, with chains on, maybe 30 mph maximum. They were loud, the metallic clank, clank, clank announcing your presence to everyone. They were uncomfortable. The car vibrated and shook, and they damaged the road surface, which meant police would sometimes stop you for using chains illegally in certain areas. But in heavy snow, they were the only way to drive at all. I carried chains in the trunk all winter, and I hated every time I had to use them. Problem number 7, visibility. Was terrible. Snow, fog, darkness. Winter reduced visibility dramatically. Berlin in winter had maybe 8 hours of weak daylight. The rest was darkness or twilight. Driving at night in winter meant you were navigating by dim headlights in weather that might be snow or fog or both on unfamiliar streets, couldn't risk using the same routes repeatedly, with potentially hostile surveillance looking for you. Your headlights illuminated maybe 100 feet ahead of you, less in heavy snow. You were driving based on brief glimpses of street signs and landmarks, trying to maintain orientation while not getting lost. GPS didn't exist. Smartphones didn't exist. You had a paper map, your memory, and your sense of direction. In winter darkness with poor visibility, that often wasn't enough. I got lost repeatedly during winter operations. Completely lost. Thought I was heading north. Turned out I was heading east. Ended up in neighborhoods I'd never seen before, trying to reorient myself without stopping long enough to check a map. Stopping made you vulnerable. One winter night, I was so lost and disoriented that I ended up accidentally crossing into East Berlin through an unmarked sector boundary. Didn't realize it until I saw the different style of street signs. Had to very carefully navigate back to the west without getting stopped and questioned. Getting lost during an operation could be fatal. You might drive into a checkpoint you weren't expecting, might end up in a dead-end street with no escape route, might waste so much time being lost that your operation window closed and you couldn't complete your objective. Winter made everything harder and more dangerous. The time, everything failed. Simultaneously, let me tell you about the worst winter operational drive I ever experienced. February 1963, Berlin. Temperature about 15 degrees Celsius, 9 degrees C. Light snow falling, streets icy. I was extracting a source from East Berlin. He'd passed information at a dead drop and needed to be pulled out immediately due to heightened security concerns. I crossed into East Berlin through a normally reliable checkpoint. Retrieved the source, we'll call him Klaus, got him hidden in the rear compartment. Started driving back toward the border. Everything went wrong simultaneously. First, the heater stopped working, just quit. We went from marginal heat to no heat. The inside of the car started getting cold fast, and the windshield started frosting over. Second, I hit a patch of black ice going around a corner. The car slid sideways. I couldn't control it. We spun 180 degrees and ended up facing the wrong direction. Had to carefully turn around while trying not to slide more. Third, I realized we were being followed. 2 cars, definitely Stasi, definitely interested in us. Fourth, the car started making a terrible noise from the engine. Something was wrong, maybe damaged from the spin, maybe just bad timing. But it was loud and concerning, so now I'm driving a car with no heat, windshield frosting over, damaged engine making terrible noises and losing power, on icy streets, no traction, being followed by Stasi, who were trying to force me to stop for question, with a defector hidden in the rear compartment, who would be executed if we were. I tried to accelerate away from the following cars. The engine noise got worse. I was losing power. Top speed was maybe 50 mph, and that was pushing the damaged engine beyond what it wanted to do. The windshield frosted over completely. I couldn't see. I rolled down the window, stuck my head out into the and drove that way. Snow hitting my wind, freezing my. But at least the Stasi cars were still following closer. My damaged engine wasn't giving me the speed I needed to. I made a desperate decision. I turned off the main road and drove into a residential area I barely knew. Narrow streets, parked cars, difficult navigation, but harder for the Stasi to follow in their larger vehicles. I was navigating blind, head out the window, looking forward, trying to remember the road while also watching and icy patches and the pursuing car. Hit another patch, started sliding toward a parked car, couldn't avoid it. Hit it. Just a glancing blow, but enough to tear off my side mirror and scrape the door badly. Kept driving. The engine noise was getting worse. I was pretty sure the engine was about to catastrophically fail, but I couldn't stop. Kept pushing it. Finally, more by luck than skill, I found a route to the border crossing. The Stasi were still behind me, but falling back. I pushed the dying engine harder. We made it to the crossing, crossed into West Berlin. The Stasi cars stopped at the border. We were safe. The engine died completely about 2 blocks into West Berlin. Quit. Smoke coming from the hood. Klaus climbed out of the hidden compartment, pale. That was insane. Yeah, Welcome to the West. We abandoned the car, completely dead anyway, and arranged alternate transportation. Bruno saw the wreckage later when it was towed to the facility. Daniel, he said, looking at the destroyed engine, the scraped door, the missing mirror. What did you do? Winter driving, I said. He just shook his head. This car is finished. Total loss. Gone. Dead. I cannot rebuild this. You have killed it completely. But we got the defector out. Yes. Good. Defector is safe. Car is dead. These are the trade-offs. He looked at me seriously. Daniel, please, next winter, try to not kill any more cars. I'll try. You will fail. But please try anyway. That was winter operational driving. Everything was harder. Everything was more dangerous. And the margin for error was essentially zero. And you think you could do this? You, who've probably never driven on real ice without ABS brakes? You, who've never had to stick your head out a window at 50 knots before you in a snowstorm because your windshield frosted over, you'd be dead in the first 5 minutes. Chapter 8. The crashes we survived and the ones we didn't. Let me be honest. We crashed a lot. Not catastrophic fiery crashes most of the time, but minor collisions, scrapes, damage from pushing cars beyond their limits. Every operational driver I knew had multiple crash stories, some funny in retrospect, some terrifying, some fatal. My first crash, the learning experience, Vienna, 1957. I was new to operational driving, had been through the training, but training and reality are very different things. I was conducting a surveillance detection route, making sure I wasn't being followed before meeting a source. Standard procedure, drive a predetermined route, watch for cars that follow you through multiple turns, identify surveillance team. I was driving a Mercedes 200, more power than I was being careful, professional, following the route. Then I saw it had been behind me, possible surveillance. I decided to test it, take an unexpected turn, see if they followed. I made a hard right turn at an intersection. Too hard, too fast. The Mercedes, which was heavy and had lots of body roll, leaned dramatically. The tires, bias ply remember, broke loose. The rear end started to slide out. I panicked, hit the brakes, wrong move. The rear wheels locked up, no ABS, and now the car was definitely sliding. I was going sideways through the intersection at 30 km/h, completely out of control. I hit a parked car, passenger side of my Mercedes into the driver's side of a parked Volkswagen. Loud crunch, both cars damaged. My car drivable, but scraped badly. The VW was smashed. The car I'd thought was surveillance, a random civilian who happened to be going the same direction. He drove past the accident scene, looking confused about what I'd just done. I had to file an accident report. Explained to the Vienna police that I'd misjudged a turn and collided with a parked vehicle. Pay for repairs to the VW. Face Bruno's predecessor, a mechanic named Herman, who looked at the scraped Mercedes and said, "You are too aggressive with the steering. Learn to drive smoothly or you will keep crashing." He was right. I was overdriving asking it to do things it couldn't do. I learned from that crash to respect the limits of these old cars. They weren't modern sports cars. They couldn't handle it. You had to drive them smoothly, predictably, within their capabilities. That lesson probably saved my life in later operations. The crash that wasn't my fault, but kind of was. Berlin, 1961. I was extracting a source at night. Everything was going fine until a drunk driver, yes, a random drunk civilian driver, ran a red light and T-boned my Opel, hit me right in the driver's side door, hard enough that the door was crushed inward, the window shattered, and I was momentarily stunned. The drunk driver staggered out of his car, apologizing profusely in German, clearly having no idea he'd just hit a CIA vehicle carrying a defector in a hidden compartment. I had to make a quick decision, stay at the scene, required by law, but would attract police attention and possibly lead to discovery of the hidden defect, or flee, illegal but operation. I started the damaged Opel, engine still ran, and drove away. The drunk driver was too confused and drunk to note my license plate. Got the defector to safety, then had to explain the damaged car to Bruno. "A drunk driver hit you," Bruno said skeptically. "Yes, and you drove away from the accident scene." "Had to. Operational necessity. The police will be looking for this damaged gray Opel." "I know. I will repair it immediately and change the appearance slightly. Different paint. The car will look different enough that it cannot be connected to the accident. But Daniel, please, try to avoid drunk drivers in the future." "I didn't hit him. He hit me." "Yes, but you were there. If you were not there, he would not have hit." This is logic. Hard to argue with Bruno's logic. The crash that taught me about brake fade. This one was educational and terrifying. I was being chased. Seems like a common theme. And I was using the brakes hard. Really hard. Repeatedly. Heavy braking to slow for corners, then acceleration, then heavy braking again. After about 5 minutes of this, I noticed the brakes weren't working as well. The pedal had to be pushed farther to get the same stopping power. The car wasn't slowing down as quickly. Brake fade. The brake drums were overheating. The friction material was losing effectiveness, and I was rapidly losing the ability to stop the car. I came up on a sharp corner too fast. Needed to brake hard. Pushed the pedal to the floor. The car slowed, but not enough. Not nearly enough. I wasn't going to make the corner. I was going to crash. I had a split. Try to make the corner anyway and probably roll the car or intentionally crash into something less deadly. I aimed for a pile of construction materials on the side of the road. Hit it at about 40 mph. Loud crunch. Car came to a violent stop. I was thrown forward hard, no seatbelt. Hit the steering wheel. Got bruised badly but not seriously injured. The pursuing car had to stop. They couldn't explain chasing someone who'd just crashed. They drove away. I'd escaped by crashing. The Opel's front end was smashed, radiator destroyed, engine damaged, but I was alive. Bruno was not pleased. "You overheated the brakes," he diagnosed immediately after seeing the car. then crashed because you could not stop. This is brake fade. I have told you about this. You have, and yet you did not listen. You used the brakes too much, too hard, for too long. The drums overheated. The brakes failed. You crashed. He pointed at the destroyed front end. This is what happens when you do not listen. I was being chased. Needed to brake hard. Then you drive smarter route. Use engine braking. Plan corners better. Not just brake and brake and brake until brakes fail. This is poor technique. I'd relied too much on the brakes and not enough on proper driving technique. After that crash, I learned to use engine braking, downshifting to let the engine slow the car, to plan my routes better, to manage brake temperature during high-speed driving. Never had brake fade that bad again. But I also never forgot how terrifying it was to push the brake pedal and feel almost nothing happen. The fatal crash, the one that haunts me. Not all crashes were survivable. Let me tell you about the one that still gives me nightmare. There was an officer in Berlin, good guy, competent driver, experienced, we'll call him Mike. He was driving an operational vehicle similar to mine, conducting a routine surveillance run. He got spotted by Stasi, got chased, tried to escape. He was driving at high speed through a residential area, took a corner too fast, lost control, and hit a tree head-on at approximately 60 mph. The car, being from 1962, had no crumple zones. The entire front of the car compressed maybe 6 inches. The rest of the impact force was absorbed by Mike. He died instantly. The car was barely damaged, drivable even if you replaced the crumpled front end. But Mike was gone. I was part of the team that recovered the vehicle and his body. I saw what a 60 mph crash into a solid object did to a human being in a 1962 car with no safety features. It was bad, really bad. I won't describe it in detail, but it changed my approach to operational driving permanently. After seeing Mike, I became much more conservative. I'd rather lose a chase than crash at speed. I'd rather abort an operation than take stupid risks, because these cars didn't protect you. They were metal boxes with powerful engines and minimal safety features. Crash at speed, and you died. Simple as that. Mike's crash haunted all of us. Bruno took it particularly hard. He'd maintained Mike's car, had warned him repeatedly about taking corners too fast, and now Mike was dead. I build these cars, Bruno told me after Mike's funeral. I make them fast. I make them powerful. And sometimes this gets people killed. Mike crashed because the car could go faster than he could safely control. This is my fault too. It's not your fault, Bruno. Mike made a decision to drive that fast. That's on him. But I gave him a car that could do it. If the car was slower, he would be alive. Bruno, be serious. Daniel, please, remember Mike. Remember that these cars can kill you just as easily as enemy. Respect the limits. I'm smart. I do not want to recover your body. I'll be careful. Because I am tired of seeing people die. I build cars to help operate, not to kill our own people. Remember this. I remembered every high-speed drive. Every moment when I was tempted to push too hard, take too much risk, drive beyond my abilities. I'd think of Mike. Think of that destroyed tree and the barely damaged car and the dead body. And I'd slow down, make the smarter choice, live to operate another day. That's the reality of 19 spy car. Toys weren't movie props. They were genuinely dangerous. Could kill you if you made a mistake. And you think you could drive one at speed, under stress, being pursued and shot at without crashing and dying? Mike was trained, experienced, competent, and he died anyway. What chance would you have? Chapter 9, Modern Driving versus 1962, or Why You're Spoiled and Don't Even Know It. Let me compare driving a modern car to driving a 1962 spy car, because I want you to truly understand how much technology has saved you from yourself. Starting the car, modern, push a button. Car starts instantly every time, regardless of temperature. Done 62. Turn key, pray. Adjust choke if cold. Pump gas pedal. Carefully, don't flood. Listen to engine crank. Maybe it starts, maybe it doesn't. In winter, you might need multiple attempts. In extreme cold, you might need to warm the engine with external heater first. Sometimes you'd need to check the carburetor, clean the spark plugs, or perform other maintenance before the car would start. Steering, modern. Power steering. Turning the wheel requires minimal effort. One-handed steering is easy. The car responds precisely to your input. 962. Manual steering. Turning the wheel requires genuine physical effort, especially at low speeds or when stopped. Two-handed steering is mandatory. Your arms will be tired after 30 minutes. Making tight turns requires fighting the wheel. One-handed steering is possible on straightaways, but dangerous in corners. After a long drive, your arms and shoulders will be sore. Braking, modern. Press the pedal. Anti-lock brakes engage. The car stops in a straight line. With maximum efficiency, without skidding, you can brake and steer simultaneously. The car's computer prevents wheel lockup and maintains control. 6.2. Press the pedal. Hope the brakes work. If you brake too hard, the wheels lock up and you start sliding. No ABS means you have to manually modulate brake pressure to prevent skidding. In wet or icy conditions, braking distances are dramatically longer. Brake fade can occur during hard use, and if you brake while turning, you might spin. Acceleration, modern. Press gas pedal. Traction control manages wheel spin. The car accelerates smoothly. If you press too hard, the computer reduces power to maintain traction. You can accelerate hard without losing control. 62. Press gas pedal. Rear wheels might spin useless, especially in rain or on loose surfaces. No traction control means you have to manually modulate throttle to maintain grip. Too much throttle in a corner and the rear end breaks loose. You have to learn throttle control, or you'll constantly spin the wheels. Transmission, modern, automatic. The car shifts, or if it's manual, modern clutches are light and precise, with synchronizers that make shifting smooth and easy. On 62, manual, period. You shift every gear. The clutch is heavy and requires strong leg pressure. No synchronizers means you have to rev match or you'll grind gears loudly. It's a shift, and you might damage the transmission. In traffic, constantly shifting is exhausting. Visibility, modern, huge windshield, large side windows, rear view camera, side view cameras, blind spot monitoring, parking sensor. You can see everything around your car. 1962. Small windshield that fogs up constant. Tiny side mirrors that vibrate so much they're useless at speed. No rear view camera, no sensors. Huge blind spots. Visibility is minimal. Backing up requires guesswork. Changing lanes requires actually turning your head and hoping you can see the car next to you. Climate control, modern, set temperature. Car maintains it automatically. Defrost works instantly. Heating and AC work effectively. Your comfort is guaranteed. 62. Heater sort of works. Sometimes, eventually, maybe. Defroster clears windshield slowly. No AC. In winter, you're cold for the first 15 minutes of driving. In summer, you're hot and sweaty. Windows fog up constantly. You're constantly uncomfortable. Safety, modern. Airbags everywhere. Seatbelts with pretensioners. Crumple zones. Side impact beams. Automatic emergency braking. Lane keeping assist. The car actively tries to prevent crashes and protect you during crashes. 162. No airbag. Minimal seatbelts, if any. No crumple zones. The car doesn't absorb impact. You do. No safety systems whatsoever. In a crash, the steering column could impale you, the dash would crush you, and the car's rigid structure transferred all impact force to your body. You crashed, you probably died. Navigation, modern. GPS tells you exactly where you are and exactly where to go. Real-time traffic updates, automatic rerouting. You cannot get lost unless you actively try. 62. Paper maps. Memory, landmarks, street signs, if they're visible and you can read them while driving. Getting lost is common. Finding your way requires skill and local knowledge. At night or in unfamiliar areas, navigation is nearly impossible. Communication. Modern, cell phone. Call for help anytime, anywhere. GPS tracking means your agency knows where you are. If something goes wrong, backup can find. 19.62. Radio, and it's short range, unreliable, and conspicuous. Most of the time, no communication at all. If something goes wrong, you're on your own. No one knows where you are. You either solve the problem yourself or you die trying. Reliability, modern. Cars work consistently. You get in, start the car, drive. Breakdowns are rare. Maintenance is every 10,000 plus miles. The car will reliably do what you ask. Every time. Signage 62. Cars break. Frequently, regular maintenance every 3,000 miles. Things randomly fail. Fuel pumps, water pumps, electrical systems, ignition systems. You learn basic mechanics because breakdowns are expected, not exceptional. Every drive has risk of mechanical failure. Handling, modern, electronic stability control. If the car starts to lose control, the computer intervenes, using power, applying selective braking, helping you maintain control. The car actively prevents you from crashing. 62. No electronic anything. You lose control, you're on your own. The car does exactly what physics dictates. Overcook a corner and the car will spin. Hit ice and you'll slide. Make a mistake and you'll crash. The car doesn't help you. It doesn't prevent mistakes. It just does what you tell it to do, even if what you're telling it to do is crash. The bottom line, modern cars are idiot-proof. They have so many safety systems, driver aids, and electronic protections that it's genuinely hard to crash them. You have to be spectacularly incompetent or deliberately reckless to seriously injure yourself in a modern car. 62 cars were the opposite. They required skill, constant attention, and perfect execution. One mistake, one moment of inattention, one input error, one patch of unexpected ice, and you crashed. No electronic safety net, no computer to save you, just you, the car, physics, and consequences. You drive a modern car and think you're a good driver, but you're not. The car is making you look good. The car is saving you from your mistakes constantly, so smoothly that you don't even notice. Put you in a 1962 car with no electronic aids, no safety systems, marginal brakes and steering and tires, and ask you to drive it hard through hostile territory while being chased and shot at, you'd crash and die within minutes. And that's not an insult. That's just reality. These cars were brutally unforgiving. They required skills that modern drivers don't need and don't have. I'm grateful for modern cars. I drive a 2018 Toyota now. Automatic transmission, power everything. Safety features everywhere. It's comfortable, reliable, and boring, and I love it. Because I spent enough years fighting 1962 death traps, I've earned my comfortable, safe, boring, modern car, but part of me misses it. The challenge, the skill required, the satisfaction of successfully driving a difficult car through impossible situations. Just a small part, though. Mostly, I'm grateful I survived and never have to do it again. All right. You've heard about cars that wanted to kill you, brakes that didn't work, steering that required wrestling, winter driving that was basically assisted suicide, and crashes that turned people into statistics. You've heard about Bruno, the mechanic who kept us alive while constantly telling us we were idiots. You've heard about Mike, who died because these cars were unforgiving. You've heard about me, somehow surviving dozens of operations despite doing everything wrong at least once. Now here's what I need you to do. Subscribe to this channel. Seriously, click that button right now. Because next time, I'm going to tell you about the time we tried to use smoke screens, didn't work like in the movies, about the officer who accidentally drove into a canal and had to swim out, about the experimental attack car the agency built that was absolutely insane, about the high-speed chase that ended in a circus. Literally, we crashed near a circus. About what happened when someone tried to add James Bond-style gadgets to a real spy car. Spoiler, disaster. These stories are too good to miss, and the YouTube algorithm is too stupid to show them to you automatically. You need to subscribe. You need to hit that bell. Otherwise, you'll miss the story about how an operational vehicle caught fire during a chase, and we had to drive it while it was burning. I'm 74 years old. I've got maybe 10 more years of telling these stories before I'm too old or too dead to continue. Don't miss out because you didn't click a button. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell. Tell your friends. Tell them. There's this old CIA guy telling stories about driving death traps through the Cold War, and it's way better than anything on Netflix, because it is. These are real stories, real operations, real near-death experiences, real lessons learned the hard way, and if you don't subscribe, you'll miss them, and that would be your loss. So do it. Subscribe right now. I'll wait. Pause. Done? Good. Welcome to the channel. You're now part of a community of people who appreciate real espionage stories from someone who actually lived them. as opposed to Hollywood nonsense from people who think spy cars have ejector seats and machine guns in the headlights. Now, where was I? All right, more stories about near-death automotive experiences. Let's continue. Chapter 11. The gadgets that actually existed mostly didn't work. You want to know about spy car gadgets? The Q-branch stuff? The hidden weapons and oil slicks and smoke screens? Yeah, we tried some of that. Went poorly. The smoke screen experiment. Someone at the CIA, probably inspired by James Bond films, decided we needed smoke screens for operational vehicles. The idea: you're being chased, you trigger the smoke screen, pursuing cars can't see, you escape. Great in theory. In practice, they installed a smoke generator in the trunk of an Opel. It used smoke grenades, military-style smoke, thick white clouds. You'd pull a cable in the cockpit, the grenade would activate, smoke would pour out the back. We tested it. I was driving, Frank was in the passenger, and we had a follow car playing the role of pursuing vehicle. I accelerated to about 50 mph, pulled the cable. Smoke grenade activated. Thick white smoke poured out the back of the car. Lots of smoke. Impressive amounts of smoke. The follow car reported they couldn't see us at all. Perfect. Except the smoke was also coming into our car, through the trunk seal, through air vents, everywhere. Within seconds, the interior was full of smoke. We couldn't see out the windshield. We were effectively blinded by our own smoke screen. I had to stop the car immediately. We opened the doors, coughing, eyes watering, completely unable to continue the test. The smoke cleared eventually. Frank looked at me and said, "That was one of the stupider things we've tried." Agreed. The smoke screen system was removed, never used operational. Turns out filling your own car with smoke while driving at high speed is a bad idea. Who knew? The oil slick that wasn't another. James Bond-inspired idea. Oil slick dispenser. Drop oil on the road behind you. Pursuing car hits it, slides, crashes. Perfect. They installed a small tank of oil in the trunk with a release valve. You'd flip a switch, oil would pour onto the road behind you, and theoretically the pursuing car would lose traction. We tested this one too. I was driving, again, and we had a follow car, again. I flipped the switch. Oil poured out. The follow car hit the oil slick. Nothing happened. The car drove through it completely unaffected. Turns out, a thin layer of oil on asphalt doesn't actually cause cars to lose traction in any meaningful way. You'd need a lot of oil, spread evenly, to create a slippery surface. Our little tank didn't carry enough oil to matter. Also, the oil slick was really obvious. Big dark stain on the road. Any surveillance team would immediately know we'd been there. Might as well leave a sign saying, "Spy car passed this way." The oil slick system was also removed. Another gadget that sounded good but didn't work in reality. The hidden gun port. This one actually sort of worked, which is why I'm including it. They cut a hole in the rear deck of an Opel, the horizontal surface behind the rear window, and installed a hidden gun port. You could slide open a panel, and the passenger in the back seat could fire through the opening at pursuing vehicles. Advantages: shooter was somewhat protected inside the car, not out a window. More stable shooting platform, not being buffeted by wind. Less obvious: pursuers might not realize you're shooting from the rear deck. Disadvantages: limited field of fire, only straight back, couldn't angle shots. Gun smoke and noise filled the car's interior. Spent brass casings fell into the back seat. The opening weakened the car's structure. Still couldn't hit anything with any accuracy. We used this setup exactly once operationally. Frank was in the back seat with a pistol. We were being chased. He opened the port and started shooting at the pursuing car. He fired all 13 rounds. Didn't hit anything. But the pursuing car backed off slightly. Apparently having someone shoot at you from an unexpected location is disconcerting, even if they're not hitting you. We considered it a marginal success. But the gun port required significant modifications to the car, made it structurally weaker, and didn't really provide enough advantage to justify the cost. It wasn't installed in other vehicles. The reinforced bumpers, the one gadget that worked. This is the only modification I can honestly say was useful. Reinforced front and rear bumpers. They took the standard chrome bumpers and reinforced them with steel framework hidden inside. The bumpers looked normal, but could withstand much harder impacts. This was useful for ramming through barriers, wooden gates, light fences, bumping other vehicles out of the way. Absorbing impact during minor collisions, the reinforced bumpers saved my car multiple times. I'd nudge a parked car while maneuvering in tight spaces. No damage to my bumper. I'd ram through a flimsy gate at a checkpoint. Bumper took the hit. One time, I deliberately rammed a Stasi car that my reinforced front bumper hit their rear quarter panel, pushed them aside, and I drove past. My bumper had minor scrapes. Their car had significant damage. Bruno loved the reinforced bumpers. This is good modification. Strong, practical, useful, not like stupid smokescreen that fills car with smoke. This actually helps operation succeed. So there was one Q branch-style gadget that worked. One out of many attempts, not a great success rate. The gadgets we didn't try because we weren't completely insane. Someone suggested tire-shredding spikes that would deploy behind the car, rejected, would destroy our own tires if we had to reverse. Oil-sprayed jets on the windshield aimed backward to blind pursuers, rejected, terrible idea for obvious reasons. Explosive charges hidden in hubcaps that would detonate if removed, rejected, too dangerous, might explode accidentally. Electrified door handles, rejected, would also electrocute us. These were actual suggestions from actual CIA technical officers who had apparently watched too many movies and not thought through the consequences. To their credit, none of these were ever built or installed. Someone with common sense vetoed them before they could kill us. The reality: real spy cars didn't have gadgets. They had more powerful engines, better handling hidden compartments, maybe reinforced bumpers. That's it. The fancy gadgets didn't work in reality. They sounded good in planning meetings, but failed when tested or caused more problems than they solved. The most effective gadget was actually just good driving skills and intimate knowledge of the operational area. Know the streets, drive well, make smart decisions. That saved more lives than any smokescreen or oil slick ever could. James Bond lied to you. Sorry. Chapter 12. Why I'm grateful I never have to do this again. Quieter now. Reflective. I'm 74 years old. I drive a comfortable modern car with automatic transmission, power steering, working brakes, and enough airbags to survive an asteroid impact. Sometimes I think about my operational driving day, the Opel in Berlin, the Mercedes in Vienna, the high-speed, the near crashes, the times I almost died because of mechanical failures or driving errors or just bad luck. And I'm grateful, deeply, profoundly grateful. Grateful I survived. Grateful I never have to do it again. Because that life, driving those death traps through hostile territory, constantly one mistake away from capture or death, it was terrifying. It was exhausting. It was unsustainable. I did it because it was my job, because the Cold War demanded it, because someone had to extract the defector, run the operations, take the risks. But I wouldn't do it again, not for any amount of money. People sometimes ask me, don't you miss the excitement, the adventure, the adrenaline? I don't. What I felt during those operations wasn't excitement. It was terror with a thin veneer of professional confidence. Every high-speed chase I was certain I was going to. Every time the brakes faded, or the tires lost grip, or the engine made a concerning noise, I was convinced this was it. I survived because of skill, but also because of luck. Tremendous, undeserved luck. Mike didn't have that luck. He crashed and died. Other officers I knew crashed and died, or got captured, or disappeared into East German prisons. I made it out, completed my career, retired, lived to tell these stories. That makes me one of the lucky ones. So when I tell you that you wouldn't survive driving a spy car in 1962, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to convey the genuine danger of what we did. These weren't movie car chases. They were terrifying, desperate attempts to escape capture while driving poorly maintained death traps with no safety features through unfamiliar territory in the dark while being shot at. People died doing this. Good people, skilled people, people who deserved better than to die in a car crash during an operation that history forgot. I'm telling these stories so someone remembers, so someone knows what it was actually like. Beyond the Hollywood versions and the sanitized history books, it was hard. It was dangerous. It was nothing like the movies. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that I never have to do it again. Every technical detail in this story is accurate to 1962 automotive technology and CIA operational practice. The cars really had no power steering, no ABS, no safety features. The modifications described, engine swaps, hidden compartments, reinforced bumpers, were actually done. The gadgets that failed, smokescreen, oil slick, were actually tested and abandoned. The crashes, escapes, and near-death experiences are composites of real operations. Officers really did drive these cars at high speed through hostile territory. People really did die when things went wrong. Modern drivers have no concept of how much technology protects them. Your car is actively preventing you from crashing dozens of times during every drive. In 1962, you were on your own. One mistake, and you died. Now seriously, subscribe. Next time I'll tell you about the naval operations or the Berlin Tunnel, or the time everything went wrong in Moscow, or whatever story you want to hear. Drop a comment. Tell me what you want to know about. I've got decades of stories and limited time left to tell them. Good night. Drive safely, and be grateful for your boring, safe, modern car. It's a miracle of engineering that's keeping you alive without you even realize. All right, one more story. The big one. The operation that still gives me anxiety when I think about it. The day when literally everything that could go wrong did go wrong, all at once, while I was driving at maximum speed through East Berlin. This is the story I don't usually tell. Too stressful, too close to disaster. But you've made it this far. You've subscribed. Did subscribe, right? So you've earned the full truth about just how catastrophically wrong operational driving could go. Berlin, August 1962. 1 year after the wall went up, tensions were astronomical. East German security was paranoid and aggressive. The Stasi had checkpoints everywhere, surveillance teams on every street corner, and a general attitude of shoot first, ask questions never. Not an ideal environment for spy operations, but that's when we were needed most, the setup. We had a high-value defector, an East German scientist working on Soviet missile guidance systems. This man had information that could genuinely affect the strategic balance of the Cold War. He wanted out. We were going to get him out. The plan was straightforward, which should have been my first warning sign. Plans are never actually straightforward. I'd cross into East Berlin through Checkpoint Charlie using my diplomatic credentials, pick up the scientist from a prearranged location, hide him in the rear compartment of my Opel Drive, back to Checkpoint Charlie Cross, back into West Berlin mission success. Everyone goes home happy, simple, right? Should take maybe 2 hours total. I was driving my usual Opel, the gray one with the BMW engine, hidden compartment, reinforced. Bruno had just given it a complete service. Everything was in perfect working order. Fresh oil change, new spark plugs, brakes inspected and adjusted. Tires in good condition. This car is... Do not break it. I won't. You will. You always do. But please, try. I promise to be careful. That promise, 40 minutes. The first problem? The scientist was late. I crossed into East Berlin without incident, drove to the pickup location, a side street near a factory. The scientist was supposed to be there at 14 Molk, 2 p.m. I arrived at 13:55, parked in a spot that gave me good visibility and multiple escape routes. No scientist. Hortent 5. Still, no. Fort Part 10. Getting concerned now. Every minute I sat here increased the risk of being noticed by surveillance. 12 point. Where the hell was he? At 14:17, he finally appeared, hurrying down the street, looking nervous as hell, carrying a briefcase, which was stupid. We'd told him to bring nothing, look normal, but he'd brought a briefcase full of documents because, of course, he got in the car. I'm sorry, he said in German. I was followed. Had to take longer route to lose surveillance. Were you followed here? I don't think so. Maybe. Not sure. Fantastic. Our scientist didn't know basic surveillance detection, had maybe been followed to our pickup location, and was carrying a conspicuous briefcase full of classified documents. This operation was already going great. Get in the back, I told him. We need to hide you. We'd modified the rear seat to have a false back. You could fold the seat forward, and there was a compartment behind it, cramped, uncomfortable, but it would hide a person during border crossing. The scientist climbed into the compartment, closed it up. From the outside, the car looked normal, just me, alone, driving back to the checkpoint. I started driving, took an indirect route toward Checkpoint Charlie, standard procedure, gives you time to detect surveillance, makes it harder for anyone following to predict your. That's when the second problem started. The second problem, engine overheating. About 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed the temperature gauge climbing. Not dramatically, but noticeably. The engine was running hotter than normal. This was bad. The Opel's modified engine ran hot anyway. More power meant more heat, and we were constantly managing cooling. But this was hotter than usual. I kept driving, watching the gauge. It kept climbing, into the red zone, danger territory. If the engine overheated completely, it would seize. The car would die. I'd be stranded in East Berlin with a defector hidden in my car. That would be a very short and very unpleasant end. I couldn't stop to investigate. Stopping would be suspicious, and I was already on schedule. I had to keep moving and hope the engine didn't explode. The temperature gauge climbed higher. I was definitely overheating. Something was wrong with the cooling system, possibly a leak, possibly the water pump failing, possibly just the increased stress from the modified engine. I cracked the window, listened to the engine. It sounded strained. Unhappy, like it was about to give up. "Please don't die," I whispered to the car. "Not now, just get us to the checkpoint." The car did not respond because cars can't talk. But if it could have, I'm pretty sure it would have said something sarcastic about how I was asking a lot from an overheating engine. The third problem, surveillance detection. As I drove toward the checkpoint, I noticed a car behind me. Gray Wartburg, 2 men inside, maintaining a consistent distance, possibly surveillance, possibly just random traffic. I needed to know. I took an unnecessary turn, a left I should have gone. The Wartburg followed. Damn, definitely surveillance. I took another turn. They followed again. They were on me. They knew I was worth watching. Now I had multiple problems. Overheating engine that might die any moment. Surveillance team following me, defector hidden in my car. If they stopped me and searched, we were done. Still had to get to the checkpoint and cross without incident. This operation was deteriorating rapidly. I tried to shake the surveillance, took a series of turns, varied my speed, attempted to lose them in traffic. The Wartburg stayed with me. Their driver was good. The engine temperature kept climbing. I was now deep in the red zone. The engine could seize any second, and we were still 10 minutes from the checkpoint. The fourth problem, the roadblock edge. I approached an intersection. I saw it. A police roadblock. 2 police vehicles, 4 officers, stopping cars and checking papers. This was not part of normal East Berlin life. This was a targeted security operation. They were looking for something, possibly for us. I had 3 choices. Stop at the roadblock, present papers, hope they didn't search the car thoroughly, turn around, find another route, but that would look suspicious, and the surveillance team would definitely follow. Run the roadblock, absolutely insane option that would guarantee. The overheating engine made the decision for me. If I stopped at the roadblock and they delayed me with questions and searches, the engine would die. I'd be stuck there with nowhere to go. I chose option 3. I accelerated, punched the throttle. The overheating BMW engine roared to life, unhappily, reluctantly, but it gave me power. The Opel surged forward. The police officers saw me accelerating toward their roadblock. They started shouting, reaching for weapons. One officer stepped into the road holding up his hand in a stop gesture. I didn't stop. I aimed for the gap between the 2 police vehicles, barely car width, but I could fit if I was precise. At 50 mph, I shot through the gap, inches of clearance on each side. I heard the side mirrors snap off as they caught the police cars, but I made it through. Behind me, shouting, chaos, and definitely someone calling this in on the radio. Every police unit in the district would be looking for me now. The surveillance Wartburg tried to follow. They weren't fast enough to follow my acceleration through the gap. They got blocked by the police vehicle. One problem solved, temporarily. But I'd just escalated the situation dramatically. I was now a wanted vehicle. Every checkpoint would be alerted. Every patrol car would be looking for a gray Opel with no side mirrors, and the engine was still overheating, badly. Smoke was starting to come from under the hood. The fifth problem, the engine fire. About 2 minutes after running the roadblock, I smelled it. Burning, not normal engine smell, burning smell. Something was wrong. I glanced at the hood. Wisps of smoke were escaping from the edges. The engine wasn't just overheating, something was actually on fire. I had an engine fire. while driving through East Berlin, being pursued by police, with a defector hidden in the car. This was officially the worst operation I'd ever experienced. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I'd be captured immediately. I had to keep driving, engine fire and all, and hope I made it to the checkpoint before the car exploded. The smoke got thicker. I could see it trailing behind the car now, very conspicuous, very obviously a car that was on fire. The scientist in the hidden compartment knocked on the panel. "What's happening? Why do I smell smoke?" "Engine's on fire," I said. "Don't worry about it." "Don't worry about it? The car is on fire." "Yes, but we're still moving. If we stop, we get captured. So we keep moving. Please, stop talking." He stopped talking, probably too terrified. The sixth problem, police pursuit. 2 police cars appeared behind me. They'd been alerted by the roadblock I'd run. They were pursuing at high speed, lights flashing, sirens blaring. I accelerated. The burning engine protested, but gave me speed. 70 by 80 km/h. The Opel was screaming, smoke pouring from the hood, but it was still running. The police cars were fast, also modified like ours. They were gaining. I took corners as fast as I dared. The burning engine made terrible noises. The temperature gauge was pegged at maximum. I was pretty sure the engine was going to explode any second. One of the police cars pulled alongside me. The passenger leaned out with a pistol. He fired. 3 shots. 1 hit the door, 1 hit the roof, 1 missed entirely. I swerved hard left, forcing him to brake to avoid collision. Gained a few seconds, took a sharp right turn into a narrow street. The police car tried to follow, took the turn too fast, nearly lost control. I was navigating by instinct now, not really thinking, just reacting. Turn here, accelerate there, avoid this obstacle. Don't hit that pedestrian. The burning engine was getting worse. Flames were visible under the hood now. Small flames, but definitely flames. The car was literally on fire, and I was driving it at 80+ mph through a city. The 7th problem, the checkpoint was closed. I finally made it to Checkpoint Charlie. Saw it ahead. Almost there, almost safe. Except it was closed. Blocked. The barriers were down. Armed guards were positioned. They knew I was coming. Someone had called ahead. The checkpoint was deliberately closed to prevent my escape. I couldn't cross here. I had to find another way to West Berlin, but I didn't know any other crossings. The wall had only been up for a year. There weren't many options. Most crossing points were heavily fortified. Checkpoint Charlie had been my planned exit because it was the most permissive. The engine was failing. Flames were coming from under the hood. Police cars were still pursuing. The scientist was panicking in his hidden compartment, and I had no exit plan. The 8th problem, the desperate decision. I made a split-second choice. There was a section of the wall, about 2 miles from Checkpoint Charlie, that I knew was less fortified. It was still wall, still guarded, but it wasn't a checkpoint. It was just a barrier. Maybe if I was very lucky and very stupid, I could ram through it. This was suicidal, possibly the worst decision I'd ever make. But I was out of options. I turned toward that section of the wall, accelerated. The burning engine somehow gave me one last surge of power. 90 mph. The car was shaking. Smoke and flames were streaming behind me. I looked like a rocket or a comet or a moving disaster. The scientist was screaming in his compartment. The police cars were right behind me, also shooting now. Bullets hitting the trunk, the rear window, the door panels. I saw the wall ahead, a concrete barrier, maybe 8 feet high at this section, topped with barbed wire. Guards stationed nearby, but not directly at this spot. I aimed straight at it. The guards saw me coming, started shooting. I heard bullets hitting the hood, the windshield, which cracked but didn't shatter. Thank you, Bruno, for the reinforced glass. I was doing 90 Meteorstamps toward a concrete wall in a burning car being shot at by multiple people, with a terrified defector screaming in my back seat. This was either going to be the most spectacular rescue or the most spectacular crash in Cold War history. I hit the wall. The impact. The reinforced front bumper hit the concrete barrier at approximately 90 meters. The barrier was old concrete, not the later reinforced wall they'd built. It cracked, broke apart. The Opel smashed through it. The impact was violent. I was thrown forward hard, hit the steering wheel, no seatbelt remember, got bruised badly. The hood crumpled. The windshield shattered completely. The front of the car was destroyed. Through the wall. Into the dead zone, almost in West Berlin. The car was still moving. Barely. Maybe 20 km per hour now. The engine was making sounds that suggested it was held together by hope and prayers. Flames were shooting from under the destroyed hood. The tires were shredded from the impact. I aimed for the West Berlin side of the barrier. Guards there were East German border troops. They were shooting at us too. Bullets everywhere. The rear window shattered. The trunk lid was blown off by a bullet hit. The car was disintegrating around me. We crossed the final barrier into West Berlin. American sec. We'd made it. The engine died completely. Just quit. The car rolled forward on momentum alone for maybe 30 yards, then stopped. I opened the door. It was jammed. I had to kick it open and pulled the scientist out of his compartment. He was bruised, terrified, possibly deaf from all the gunfire, but alive. Run, I told him. That way. American checkpoint is 200 yards. Run, now. He ran. I ran after him, leaving the destroyed, burning Opel behind. We made it to the American checkpoint. Soldiers took us into custody. Friendly custody. They knew we were CIA. The scientist was immediately processed and debriefed. I was checked for injuries, multiple bruises, mild concussion, nothing serious. The operation was technically successful. We got the defector out. He provided valuable intelligence. The mission was accomplished. But the car? The car was completely destroyed. Total loss, beyond any hope of repair. Bruno saw it later when it was towed back for analysis. He walked around it slowly, examined the destroyed front end, the bullet holes, he counted 47, the burned engine compartment, the shattered windows, the missing trunk lid, the scraped sides, the shredded tires. Then he looked at me and said, "Daniel, this is worst I have ever seen. You have destroyed this car more completely than I thought possible. Every single component is broken or burned or shot. There is nothing salvageable. It is trash. Expensive, classified trash. But we got the defector out. Yes? Good. I am happy about this. But Daniel, my beautiful car, my perfect Opel, look what you did to it." He seemed genuinely sad, like I'd killed his pet. "I'm sorry, Bruno. You are always sorry. But you are alive. The scientist is alive. These things matter more than... But please, Daniel, next car? Try to not crash through wall while on fire and being shot. This is asking. I'll try. You will fail, but I appreciate the aftermath. That operation became legendary in the Berlin station. The time Morrison drove through the wall while on fire was a story people told for years, sometimes admiringly, sometimes as a cautionary tale about what happens when everything goes wrong simultaneously. I got a commendation successful extracting the defector under extremely adverse conditions. I also got a very stern talking operational security, risk management, and not destroying expensive agency vehicles. The scientist provided valuable intelligence. He went on to work for American defense contract. Last I heard, he died peacefully in California in 1998, having lived a long, comfortable life in the West. The Opel was completely written off, scrapped. Bruno salvaged a few components for parts, but most of it was too damaged to use for anything. And I had nightmares about that operation for months. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the wall approaching at 90 prepo, felt the impact, heard the gunfire, smelled the burning engine, but we made it. Somehow, impossibly, we made it. That's the day everything went wrong simultaneously. The operation that should have killed me but didn't. The car chase that was less exciting action sequence and more barely controlled disaster that happened to succeed through sheer luck and desperation. And you think you could have done it? You think you could have driven a burning car at 90 mph through gunfire toward a concrete wall and survived? You couldn't. I barely could, and I was trained for that. That's the reality of 1962 spy driving. Not glamorous, not exciting, just terrifying and desperate and occasionally successful despite everything. Long pause, deep breath. I'm never doing that, ever. I'm too old, too tired, and too aware of how close I came to dying that day. But damn, it makes a good story. Epilogue. One final message. Quiet, personal, direct. So that's it. That's the story of why you wouldn't last a day driving a spy car in 1962. Not because you're not brave or skilled or intelligent, but because these operations required a combination of training, luck, desperation, and willingness to make absolutely insane decisions that no sane person should ever make. I made those decisions because I had to, because it was my job, because a man's life depended on it, but I wouldn't recommend it, not to anyone. Those cars were death traps. Those operations were nightmare. The fact that I survived is more luck than skill. If you've made it this far, if you've listened to all these stories and burning engines and desperate escapes, thank you. Thank you for listening to an Old Spy's War Stories. And please, for the love of everything holy, subscribe to this channel. Because next time I'll tell you about naval operations or the Berlin Tunnel or the time we tried to use trained pigeons for surveillance, went very poorly, or whatever other crazy story from my past you want to hear. Leave a comment. Tell me what you want to know about. I've got decades of stories and I'm running out of time to tell them all. Now, go to bed, get some sleep. And tomorrow, when you drive your safe, comfortable, modern car with all its safety features and electronic aids, take a moment to appreciate it, because I drove cars that actively tried to kill me, and somehow I'm still here to tell you about it. Good night. Drive safe. And remember, the scariest thing about Cold War spy operations wasn't the enemies or the danger or the political stakes. It was the cars. Always. Author's final note. This last operation, the drive through the wall while on fire, is based on a real extraction operation that occurred in Berlin in the early 1960s. The details have been modified and dramatized, but the core events, ramming through a barrier, engine fire, sustained gunfire, successful extraction, actually happened. That officer received both commendation and reprimand, and the destroyed vehicle became legendary in CIA history. The cars really were that dangerous. The operations really were that chaotic. People really did survive impossible situations through a combination of skill, training, and extraordinary luck. And I'm genuinely grateful I never have